Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The soft hum of the evening filled the room as I stood before the mirror, adjusting the delicate fabric of my dress. The zipper refused to budge, and I cursed under my breath, my fingers fumbling over the slick satin. That's when he appeared behind me, his presence unexpected but somehow comforting. "Need a hand?" His voice was low, teasing, and I felt the first spark of something electric run through me. He reached for the zipper with a polite, almost tender motion, his fingers brushing against mine. My breath hitched at the sudden, fleeting touch, and I caught myself staring at the reflection in the mirror, our eyes meeting in an instant that felt too long, too heavy, too intimate. A playful smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth, and the room seemed to shrink around us, the air suddenly thick and charged. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest, the warmth of his closeness brushing against my skin. Every subtle movement, the tilt of his head, the quiet brush of his arm against mine, made a shiver run down my spine. The familiar line between family and something forbidden blurred, leaving only a tantalizing tension that neither of us addressed but both of us felt. Then, the zipper slipped, and he didn't stop at the top as I expected. My stomach fluttered with nervous anticipation as his hand lingered, and he pressed his lips to the curve of my shoulder. The air between us was electric, heavy with unspoken desires, and for the first time, I didn't pull away. Instead, I leaned subtly into his touch, wanting to see how far this silent, charged game could go. The moment stretched, the room holding its breath with us, as a quiet, daring question hung in the space between our hearts. How far would we let this closeness go before someone noticed? And just as I was about to respond to the pull of the moment, the sound of footsteps outside the door froze us both, leaving me trembling, caught in the tension of what was about to unfold. Even before tonight, there had always been an unspoken rhythm in our home, a careful balance of smiles, shared glances, and the polite distance we maintained around one another. My husband, absorbed in work more often than not, seemed to drift further away with each passing week, leaving me quietly craving attention and connection. His absence created pockets of loneliness I didn't always notice until someone unexpectedly stepped into them. His son, my stepson, had always been sweet, attentive, and unusually aware of me. At first, I brushed it off as simple kindness, the harmless affection of someone who just wanted to help. But over time, there were moments, small touches that lingered, shy smiles that held something more, a gaze that seemed to linger a heartbeat too long, that hinted at emotions neither of us dared to name. I'd find myself watching him in those brief instances, heart racing, wondering if I was imagining it, or if the air between us truly carried something electric. Tonight, standing there with the zipper slipping between his fingers, every unspoken feeling seemed to surface at once. The playful tension in his eyes mirrored the one I'd been harboring silently for months. I could feel the subtle brush of his hands on mine, the warmth of his body close enough to notice the faint rhythm of his heartbeat through his shirt. My own pulse quickened, a nervous, delicious thrum that made the air feel almost too thick to breathe. It wasn't just physical closeness, it was the intimacy of trust, the way he knew exactly how to handle the zipper without hesitation, the way our laughter and nervous smiles danced around the edges of something forbidden. My mind swirled with conflicting emotions, guilt, excitement, longing, curiosity. Each sensation added layers to the tension, weaving a complex web of desire and restraint that neither of us dared untangle, yet. As the moments stretched, I realized how deeply these small, stolen encounters had affected me. I wanted attention, yes, but it wasn't just about that. It was about feeling seen, understood, wanted, and desired in ways I hadn't felt for years. The thrill of this closeness, the weight of our unspoken attraction, pulled me in like gravity. Every glance, every accidental touch, every shared laugh was a reminder that beneath the polite surface of our home lay a current of longing neither of us could deny. And yet, there was always that hovering question: how far could we go without shattering the fragile trust of the family around us? I could sense the same question mirrored in his eyes, a silent dare that made my pulse race even faster. We were on the edge of something forbidden but irresistible, and I knew that the next moment could change everything. The next morning carried a quiet tension that seemed to linger in every corner of the house. My husband was preoccupied with work, his phone glued to his hand, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. I caught myself watching him leave the room, a small pang of disappointment twisting in my chest. It wasn't that I disliked him, it was that I craved attention, intimacy, and a spark that had long since faded from our marriage. And then there was him. My stepson. The memory of last night, subtle yet vivid, replayed in my mind. The touch of his hands, the warmth of his lips brushing against my shoulder, the daring way he had held my gaze, it was impossible to ignore. A guilty thrill ran through me whenever he appeared nearby, every innocent smile now layered with hidden meaning. He lingered in the kitchen, pretending to pour a glass of juice, but I noticed how his eyes kept finding me. There was a subtle shift in his demeanor, something more confident, almost teasing, as if he knew the effect he had on me. My pulse quickened, and I felt a strange mix of excitement and guilt. I tried to focus on pouring my coffee, but my hands trembled slightly, betraying my composure. The tension was mutual. I could sense the unspoken question hovering between us: how far could we push this without anyone noticing? Every glance, every accidental brush of a hand, felt like a spark threatening to ignite a fire we both knew we shouldn't start. And yet, part of me wanted it to. Part of me wanted him to lean closer, to test the boundaries of our connection. And just as I was convincing myself to step back, he moved slightly closer under the guise of reaching for something on the counter. The heat of his presence was inescapable, and my stomach fluttered with nervous anticipation. I could feel my heart racing, each beat echoing in my ears. The air between us felt electric, loaded with temptation, and the question of what would happen next seemed to hang in slow motion. Before either of us could speak, the sound of the front door opening jolted us both, freezing the charged moment mid-air. We exchanged a fleeting, intense glance, one filled with longing, hesitation, and the knowledge that the next decision could change everything. The evening had settled into a soft, golden glow, the kind that made shadows stretch and the world feel intimate and private. I found myself alone in the living room, the hum of the air conditioner and the quiet ticking of the clock amplifying every heartbeat. And then he appeared, as if drawn by the same invisible thread that kept pulling us together. There was no one else in the house. The quiet made every small movement between us feel louder, every glance heavier. He moved closer under the pretense of adjusting a cushion on the sofa, but the closeness was undeniable. The warmth of his presence brushed against my arm, and I felt that familiar thrill, a delicious mix of anticipation and forbidden temptation that made my pulse quicken. Our eyes met, lingering in a way that said more than words ever could. There was a playful tension in his expression, the kind that teased and dared, and I felt myself responding in kind, leaning subtly into his space, letting the silence stretch between us just long enough to be unbearable. Each shared breath, each hesitant shift of weight, added layers to the charged atmosphere. A soft laugh escaped me when his hand accidentally brushed mine, though we both knew it wasn't entirely accidental. My chest tightened with nervous excitement, my thoughts a swirl of guilt and desire. It was impossible to deny the energy between us, a magnetic pull neither of us could resist. Just as the moment seemed about to tip into something undeniable, the sound of a phone buzzing on the table startled us both. We froze, eyes locked, caught between temptation and reality. The brief interruption only made the tension thicker, heavier, the air almost vibrating with the unspoken question, what happens next? Neither of us moved, the silence stretching unbearably, both aware that this charged closeness could lead somewhere neither of us was supposed to go, and yet, part of me wanted it to. And then, as if daring fate itself, he leaned just a fraction closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. Our eyes held, breaths mingled, and the world outside ceased to exist. The next instant would decide everything. The night had fallen, the house quiet except for the distant hum of traffic outside. I thought I could calm my racing heart, but the moment he entered the room, every ounce of restraint dissolved. His eyes locked on mine, full of daring and intensity, and I felt an invisible thread pulling us toward the edge of something we had both been craving for weeks. We stood only a few feet apart, and the air between us was electric. Every gesture, how he tilted his head, how I shifted slightly closer, felt charged with unspoken desires. My mind raced, torn between guilt, anticipation, and the thrill of the unknown. The tension that had been building for months finally seemed poised to explode. Then came the twist, sudden and shocking. A soft cough behind us made both of us freeze, our hearts leaping. My husband had returned early from a late meeting, his presence cutting through the charged bubble around us like a knife. The warmth and intimacy we had been sharing evaporated in an instant, replaced by a swirl of panic and awkwardness. I realized then that the line between longing and betrayal had never felt more real. He glanced at me, a mix of apology and defiance in his eyes, and I understood that our connection had been more dangerous than either of us had admitted. Every laugh, every touch, every lingering glance had been a risk that was now exposed. And yet, there was no going back. The truth was out in the subtle tension lingering in the room. We both knew something had shifted irreversibly. His hand brushed mine again, just barely, but it was enough to ignite a storm of emotions I hadn't anticipated: regret, excitement, fear, and desire all tangled together. My husband's presence was a reminder of everything forbidden, but also of the choices we had yet to face. Could this attraction be contained? Or had the invisible threads between us already woven a story that could never be untangled? The questions hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, as we stood in silence, the room charged with a tension that refused to fade. And as the seconds stretched, both of us realized that one decision could change everything. The cliffhanger left our hearts pounding, the future uncertain, and the story teetering on the edge of revelation. The room felt impossibly small, the air thick with tension and unspoken words. My husband's gaze was sharp, a mix of confusion, hurt, and authority, while my stepson's expression mirrored the storm I felt inside: guilt, defiance, and a strange vulnerability. I could barely breathe, the weight of our choices pressing down on me like never before. I didn't mean, he started, but my husband's raised hand cut him off. Silence filled the space, each heartbeat echoing like a drum. I stepped forward, trying to calm the chaos, but even my own voice trembled. "This isn't just about mistakes," I said softly, more to myself than to anyone else. "It's about honesty. About seeing each other for who we really are, and understanding the consequences of what we let happen." The room seemed to pulse with the intensity of the moment. Every glance, every slight movement carried weight. My husband's eyes softened slightly as he took in the truth of my words, the silent acknowledgement that feelings had been hidden for far too long. And my stepson, finally letting go of some of his bravado, looked ashamed but relieved, as if admitting the truth had lifted a heavy burden. Tears prickled at my eyes. "We can't pretend anymore. We have to face this, all of it, together. Whatever it means." My voice grew steadier, more certain. The tension in the room didn't disappear, but it shifted, it became something more constructive, a bridge instead of a wall. The next few moments were a whirlwind of emotion, apologies exchanged, confessions spoken, and realizations settling in. The stepson hung back, unsure, but I reached out a hand, a gesture of connection, not temptation. He accepted it, and for the first time, there was a fragile sense of understanding. My husband stepped closer, placing a protective hand on my shoulder, and in that small touch, the storm of the night began to calm. We weren't perfect, and the path ahead was uncertain. But for the first time, the lies and secret desires no longer ruled the room. The energy between us had transformed, no longer dangerous but charged with possibility, trust, and a deeper understanding of one another. As the night stretched on, the house quiet once again, I realized that the heart of our story wasn't just about temptation or forbidden attraction, it was about the courage to confront emotions, the power of honesty, and the possibility of love surviving even the most complicated situations. The final glance between us lingered, a quiet promise of connection, leaving the door open for whatever the future might hold. The night had finally settled into a calm, quiet stillness. After the whirlwind of tension, confessions, and emotional storms, the three of us found ourselves in a rare moment of peace. I sat on the edge of the sofa, my husband beside me, his hand gently holding mine, and the stepson standing nearby, a shy but sincere smile on his face. It wasn't about forbidden attraction anymore, it was about understanding, forgiveness, and the bonds that had been tested and strengthened. My husband squeezed my hand, a silent reassurance that no matter how complicated things had become, we were still a team. The stepson, sensing the shift, offered a tentative laugh, easing the last of the tension that had clung to the room like heavy velvet. I leaned back, letting the warmth of the moment wash over me. The soft golden glow of the lamp painted gentle shadows on the walls, and for the first time in weeks, I felt completely seen and safe. My heart, still fluttering from the intensity of earlier moments, now settled into a calm, steady rhythm. He sat down next to me, the stepson now close enough to feel included without crossing boundaries. We shared stories and laughter, the air light with shared understanding. I realized then that romance wasn't just about desire or passion, it was about connection, trust, and the joy of being seen for who we truly are. Finally, my husband leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "We'll figure this out," he whispered softly. "All of it." His words, gentle and firm, felt like a promise that the trials we'd faced had only made us stronger. And as I glanced at the two people who now shared a space in my heart, I knew that even through awkwardness and tension, love had endured. The quiet closeness, the laughter, and the shared understanding were more intimate than any fleeting desire had ever been. The night closed around us, but the warmth of connection remained. In that simple, quiet way, romance didn't shout, it glowed softly, steadily, and memorably. It was a moment of closure, of hope, and of a bond that would last beyond misunderstandings, mistakes, or temptation. We didn't need fireworks or dramatic declarations, just the gentle certainty of knowing we belonged together in trust, affection, and shared laughter. And in that, the story found its perfect ending.